This is going to hurt, but it is my duty to expose the ultimate lie, the one with a capital U and a capital L. It is not, it is the most insidious lie ever orchestrated by our democratic states. A large-scale scam affecting almost everyone on this planet. It is the lie that brings in the most money. It is the lie that has been turned into a business model supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs worldwide. It is the lie of which you are totally oblivious that literally threatens the diversity of species and threatens life as we know it on our planet today in 2024. Let us get down to the facts and the arguments. Human beings are responsible for global warming because to heat ourselves and to move around, human beings release carbon dioxide, CO2, the main greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. This will cause the destruction of our environment and the end of our civilizations. To protect you, the state is forced to charge you anything between 400 and 800% in taxes on your energy. Is that all? Maybe not. Let us go over this point by point. Without the greenhouse effect, the Earth's average temperature would be between -13 and -17 Celsius, i.e., between 1 and 8 degrees Fahrenheit. Life as we know it would be absolutely impossible because the Earth would be covered in ice all the way up to the equator. Therefore, you should thank the heavens every day for the blessing that is the greenhouse gas effect, which allows us to have temperatures that are compatible with life on our planet. All climatologists know that the green gas responsible for 70 to 85% of the global warming greenhouse effect is water vapor, not CO2, not methane. CO2 accounts for less than 2% of the global warming greenhouse gas effect, possibly reaching 3% according to less rigorous estimates. In fact, it is rather more like 1.5% of the global greenhouse effect on Earth. In other words, it's totally homeopathic. Well, CO2, therefore, plays a negligible homeopathic role in the global warming greenhouse gas effect on our planet. Indeed, it is also at low concentrations relative to the atmosphere as a whole that CO2 deploys most of its greenhouse gas effect. Without getting into the details, this is due to the physiochemical properties of the CO2 molecule. If it takes 800 ppm part per million to increase the atmosphere's temperature by 1 degree, it will take an additional 1,600 ppm to gain the next degree, and an additional 3,200 ppm for the next degrees, and so on. you will notice that in the inertia of the intellectual manipulation to which I'm subjected, just like you, by the so-called climate specialists, I talk about CO2 concentration in ppms, part per millions, rather than talking about percentages. The expert manipulators use the ppm measure to prevent me and you from making insightful analysis. At first glance, 420 appears to be a relatively large number. It is tangible. We can easily visualize it. In reality, 420 ppm of CO2 actually represents 0.042% in percentage terms. Why should we have not expressed the measure this way? Why not express the measure of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere as a percentage figure as we normally do it in everyday life? Once again, this serves to better disguise their lies, to better manipulate you, to make you believe that CO2 concentration is high when, when it is in fact very low in absolute terms, and in particular in comparison to historical data of the last 500 million years. We will explore this later in the text. In 2024, CO2 does not even represent half a tenth of a percent. Let me repeat, CO2 does not even represent half a tenth of 1% of Earth's atmosphere. But 420 ppm is a unit of measurement no one uses on a daily basis. It adds weight to all their lies. But there is something even more important to be said here. All living organisms, fungi, plants, and animals use carbon, which constitutes the core element of every molecule of which they are composed. We call this organic chemistry, or the chemistry of life, if you prefer. All carbon atoms at the core of the architecture of all molecules of which you are composed come from atmospheric CO2. Plants absorb carbon dioxide, and photosynthesis splits the CO2 molecule to keep the carbon necessary for their biological structures and metabolism, of course, before releasing oxygen as a waste product. Carbon dioxide is the only source of carbon for plants and, more generally, of all living beings on Earth. One could say that there is not a single atom of carbon at the core of all molecules of which your body cells are composed that was not at the origin CO2 before being transformed by photosynthesis. When you consume a salad or vegetable or a fruit or nuts, the carbon you absorb comes from atmospheric CO2. It is thanks to CO2 that you find these nutrients in your plate. Even if when you consume meat, fish, cheese, eggs, the carbon at the core of amino acids, proteins, fatty acids, the fat, and carbohydrates, sugars, comes 100% from carbon dioxide, from atmospheric CO2. In conclusion, just as phytoplankton is the first link of the marine food chain, Atmospheric carbon dioxide, i.e. CO2, is the first molecular link in the chain of life on our planet. This is a fact. It is undeniable. It is absolutely incontestable. Any first-year biology student will confirm this. You might now be beginning to understand that atmospheric CO2 is a blessing. Without it, life on Earth, as we know it, would simply not exist. It is in no way a pollutant. Carbon dioxide is the first molecular link in the chain of life, as essential to life as are water and sunlight. Together, they are the three ingredients that are necessary for plant photosynthesis. If one of them is missing, the plant dies. In 2024, atmospheric CO2 concentration is about 0.042%, or, if you prefer, 420 ppm. This is very low compared to the average CO2 concentration over the last 500 million years, which was 4 to 10 times higher than today. I.e., between 0.12 and 0.42%, or again, if you prefer, if you wish, between 1,200 ppm and 4,200 ppm. I draw your attention to the fact that if we drop below 0.02% of CO2 in the atmosphere, plants suffer. The plant life suffers. And below 0.015% of 100 or below 150 ppm, photosynthesis becomes impossible and plants die. Just a century and a half ago, during the period 1800 to 1900, we rarely exceeded 0.025% or 250 ppm of CO2 in the atmosphere, putting photosynthesis and thus all plant life at risk. One reason for this decrease in atmospheric CO2 concentration over the past few million years is that marine organisms such as corals and crustaceans have become extremely efficient at using calcium carbonate derived from CO2 to grow their skeletons and shells, exoskeletons. So even coral reefs and their entire ecosystems depend directly on CO2 concentration to thrive. One effect of the current low atmospheric CO2 concentration is that terrestrial plants open their pores to the maximum to try and capture the carbon dioxide on which they depend. In doing so, they lose a lot of water. Just like when you perspire, you open the pores of the skin, they open the pores of their structures. Through exudation, they lose water, and they must compensate for this water loss by consuming up to 10 times more liquid. Many biologists see this as one of the root causes of the desertification on our planet. It is even proven that since we release more CO2 in the atmosphere, Over the last 30 years, we make a spectrographic analysis of the wavelength reflected by the Earth. And versus 30 years ago or 25 years ago, I can't recall the precise number, the planet is like almost 30% greener. And that is solely coming from the slight increase of CO2 from last century or century and a half ago level to what it is today. Anyway, I'm not going to extend on that one, but just to let you know. Well, at this point in the chapter, you might be thinking, what the hell is he talking about? Everything that you are now reading probably represents the exact opposite of what you currently believe. However, for most, learning what you already know is impossible, which is why you need to empty part of your cup. You need to unlearn, to break the inertia of the beliefs that currently populate and fill your brain completely. The inertia of everything that you were taught in school or university. Your problem is that you do not want to unlearn. You do not want to replace lies with the truth. You're afraid of freedom, just as you are afraid of the light. You want to continue being part of the herd. You do not want to have to confront the sheep around you, who docilely follow the prevailing narratives. In fact, you want to remain ignorant because you find your comfort in your ignorance, to the point of accepting the worst lies without realizing how much they actually harm your quality of life and your environment itself. You want to continue to believe in the lies of scientific experts who are fully aware of everything I have just explained to you. But they do not present the facts in this way for fear of being ejected from the herd themselves. Do not think for a moment that they are not capable of making the connections that a 7-year-old child can easily make. They lie to you because they are simply afraid of being rejected, of losing their job, of harming their financial interests, afraid to lose their status in our society. This actually stems from an education system that needs a complete overhaul, because this system no longer teaches us to accept conflicts as part of our life, to manage it without violence, to confront it, to defend the truth, to defend our convictions and the values that make humanity so strong. I delve into this topic further in my chapter 6, Education. Back to CO2. Another anecdote. I was recently with a friend who is an independent journalist, who has an incredible knowledge about everything. I would call him a walking encyclopedia. He insisted that biologists had diagnosed certain varieties of trees in the Amazon rainforest as becoming obese due to an excessive high concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. How is it that he cannot make the connections? He knows that the 2024 CO2 level is very low compared to the level of its concentration over the last 500 million years. He knows that wheat or barley has a genome a DNA at least 3 times more complex than that of a human being. He is aware that only a small percentage of DNA defines what you are. The majority of DNA is kept, presumably, to allow the species to adapt more quickly to environmental changes. He knows that for the overwhelming majority of plants, like 99.9%, the complexity of their DNA gives them an adaptive capacity superior to our own. He knows that 99.99% of plants can only benefit from an increase in CO2, the indispensable basis for photosynthesis. In spite of his scientific knowledge, he allows himself to be manipulated by the proponent of the ecological business model, in inverted commas, who need to make you feel guilty to generate their wealth, and by consequence try to make us believe that CO2 is the poison that makes trees obese. You should know that when CO2 levels were at 0.25% or 2,500 ppm, i.e. 6 times higher than today, the Earth boated lush forests and accompanying fauna all the way from the Arctic to the Antarctic. When I tried to reason with my journalist friend by simply reminding him of the above fundamentals, he became aggressive and did not let me finish my explanation. This so-called erudite man defends a dogma which has become a fabulous money-making machine by making you feel guilty for those unscrupulous enough to use this dogma against you, to exploit you, to exploit your ignorance, and to steal your money. It is the world turned upside down. There is nothing even more important. As you have now understood, photosynthesis captures carbon from CO2 and releases oxygen as a waste product. I wanted to say there is something even more important than what I just explained 2 minutes ago. And this is what I'm going to go on. You must know that 99.9999999% of the oxygen atoms in the Earth's atmosphere are produced by plants and photosynthetic organisms, with phytoplankton in the oceans leading the way. So all the oxygen you need, that you absorb with every breath, the oxygen you cannot live without for more than a minute or two from birth to death, comes exclusively from CO2 transformed by photosynthesis. These are, again, indisputable, undeniable facts. Without atmospheric CO2, there is no photosynthesis, there is no oxygen to breathe, there is no carbon available to form the core of every molecule in the chemistry of life on Earth. There is no life as we know it today. You probably now understand that the carbon atoms that serve the architecture of all the molecules in your body come from CO2 And every oxygen atom you breathe also comes from CO2. Yet, you will probably continue to believe that CO2 is the worst pollutant, that it will cause the downfall of our civilization and all living species, because it is responsible for the greenhouse gas effect, thus in turn responsible for the global warming, which will end life on Earth. Bravo! Well done! Great analytical skills, great ability to make connections, or great intelligence. Oh, yeah. You do not want to understand a simple and inescapable reasoning based on incontestable facts. You cannot admit that you have been foolish enough to be duped for such a long time. It is painful to be betrayed by your fellow human, betrayed by the scientists that you trusted, betrayed by the media, betrayed by your government. But do not change a thing. Do not bother trying to understand. Do not try to admit your mistakes. And certainly, do not try to correct them. Go hide in your complexitatus. Thank you very much. Continue to live in your empire of lies, since apparently it suits you. You are comfortable there. You wish to keep believing the narrative because you want to follow the herd like a sheep. You want to be part of the group, part of the majority of self-righteous people. It is the tactic of the ostrich. You hide. You do not want to face reality. School did not teach you how to face problems and take the necessary measures. You prefer to remain non-existent and let the mistake weigh on your children, who will one day, inevitably, have to clean up the mess that you have built and that you are leaving behind. If you still have the courage, the question that you must ask yourself are, why did they lie to me so much? Question mark. What justifies such a betrayal? Where does the funding come from to organize a lie on such a global scale? What all-powerful interests are behind such a scam? Who benefit from this crime? And like any good investigator, your attitude should be, follow the money. If you have the courage, find out who exactly benefits financially from these lies, and you will find the culprits. This is what I propose to do here below. While biologically, CO2 is your indispensable ally, while it is the first link in the molecular chain of life for all living beings on Earth, it is presented to you as your enemy. Enemy. I can't believe this. While the greenhouse gas effect is essential for life, while the warm climate that we have been experiencing for several millennia has facilitated the success of human civilizations, these, in fact, ideal climatic conditions are presented to you as the enemy. The media, the scientists, and governments repeat the same lies. But why? The answer is so simple, so obvious that you cannot see it. It is staring at you in the face. You can see it blinded as you are by your chronic complexititis.